It all started innocently enough. I was just like any other teenager, obsessed with Snapchat, capturing moments, sharing stories, you know the drill. But one day, I stumbled upon something that would haunt me forever. It was late at night, and I was lying in bed, mindlessly scrolling through my Snapchat feed. That's when I saw it, a story from someone I didn't recognize. The username was gibberish, a jumble of letters and numbers that made no sense. But what caught my eye was the thumbnail, a grainy photo of what looked like an abandoned house. Curiosity piqued, I tapped on the story to view it. The screen went black for a moment before the video started playing. It was dark, the only light coming from the flashlight on the phone. The person behind the camera was breathing heavily, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they made their way through the house, I felt a chill run down my spine. Something about the place seemed off, like it was steeped in darkness and secrets. I should have stopped watching right then and there, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. The video continued, the person exploring room after room, their flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. And then, they stopped. In front of them was a door, slightly ajar, with a faint light spilling out from the crack. With trembling hands, they pushed the door open, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. My heart was pounding in my chest as they descended, each step echoing ominously in the silence. At the bottom of the stairs, they found what looked like a makeshift altar, adorned with candles and strange symbols. And in the center, lying on the ground, was a doll that looked eerily similar to one I had as a child. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I watched, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Who was behind this Snapchat story? And what did they want? But before I could find out, the video abruptly ended, leaving me staring at my phone screen in shock. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease that had settled over me, chalking it up to an elaborate prank or some kind of viral marketing stunt. But deep down, I knew there was something more sinister at play. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. The next day, I tried to put the strange Snapchat story out of my mind. I went about my day as usual, hanging out with friends, going to school, pretending like everything was normal. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered in the back of my mind. That night, I found myself drawn back to the mysterious Snapchat story. I tried to find the user again, but their account was nowhere to be found. It was like they had disappeared into thin air. But then, just as I was about to give up hope, another story appeared in my feed. It was from the same username, the same grainy thumbnail of the abandoned house. My heart began to race as I tapped on the story, not knowing what to expect. The video started playing, and this time, the person behind the camera was speaking. Their voice was low and raspy, sending chills down my spine as they whispered into the darkness. "I know you're watching," they said, their words sending a shiver down my spine. "I know you saw my story, and now, you're a part of it." I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as I watched, unable to tear my eyes away from the screen. Who was this person? And what did they want from me? The video continued, the person weaving through the dark corridors of the abandoned house, their flashlight illuminating the way. And then, they stopped in front of a door that looked eerily familiar. With trembling hands, they pushed it open, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. My heart was pounding in my chest as they descended, each step echoing ominously in the silence. At the bottom of the stairs, they found the same makeshift altar, the same candles flickering in the darkness, and in the center, lying on the ground, was a doll that looked exactly like me. I felt a scream rise in my throat as I watched, my blood running cold. This couldn't be happening. It had to be some kind of sick joke. But then, I heard a sound behind me, a faint rustling, like someone, or something, moving in the darkness. I whipped around, but there was nothing there, just the empty room, bathed in moonlight. And then, without warning, the lights flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking as I tried to turn on the flashlight. But when the light finally came on, I wished it hadn't. Because standing in front of me, bathed in the eerie glow of the screen, was the doll. The same doll from the Snapchat story. Its eyes empty and lifeless, staring straight into my soul. I screamed and dropped my phone, scrambling backwards in terror. But no matter how far I ran, the doll followed, its footsteps echoing in the darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the doll vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness. I don't know how long I sat there, trembling and terrified, but eventually the sun began to rise, casting its warm glow over the room. I gathered up the courage to pick up my phone and check Snapchat. But the story was gone, as if it had never existed. But I know what I saw, and I know that I'll never be able to forget it. It was a typical evening, and like any other millennial, I was scrolling through my Snapchat feed, mindlessly tapping through my friends' stories. But as I flicked through the snaps of dinners, parties, and cute pets, I noticed something strange. There was a snap from a user I didn't recognize. Their username was a string of random letters and numbers, and their snap was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was a dark, grainy video of what looked like an empty room, the only sound a faint whispering in the background. I tried to brush it off as just another weird Snapchat glitch, but something about the snap gnawed at me. It felt sinister, somehow. Against my better judgment, I decided to investigate further. I messaged the user, asking them who they were and how they got my Snapchat username. To my surprise, I received a response almost immediately. "I need your help," the message read. "Please, you're the only one who can save me." I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the message. Who was this person, and what did they want from me? But despite my growing unease, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to help them. They sent me another snap, this one even more disturbing than the last. It showed a dark, dingy room with flickering lights, and in the corner, a figure huddled in the shadows. I couldn't make out much detail, but I could see that they were shaking, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Without thinking, I replied to the message, asking where they were and how I could help. The response came back almost immediately, a location tag attached. I hesitated for a moment, then made a split-second decision to go and investigate. I grabbed my phone, slipped on my shoes, and headed out into the night. The location led me to an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was a dilapidated, graffiti-covered building that looked like it hadn't been used in years. I felt a sense of dread wash over me as I approached, but I pushed aside my fear and pressed on. Inside, the warehouse was even more eerie than I had imagined. The air was thick with dust and decay, and the only sound was the echo of my footsteps on the concrete floor. I followed the location tag deeper into the warehouse, my heart pounding in my chest with each step. The further I went, the more the feeling of unease grew, until it felt like I was being suffocated by it. Finally, I reached the spot indicated by the location tag. It was a small, dimly lit room tucked away in a corner of the warehouse. And there, in the center of the room, was a figure kneeling on the ground. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. The figure looked up at me, their eyes wide with terror. "Thank God you're here," they said, their voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was going to die in here." I reached out to help them up, but as my hand touched their shoulder, they recoiled as if burned. I could see now that they were covered in dirt and grime, their clothes torn and tattered. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. They looked at me with haunted eyes. "It's not safe here," they whispered. "We need to leave, now." Before I could respond, a sudden noise echoed through the warehouse, a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. I turned to see a dark figure emerging from the shadows, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I froze in terror as the figure advanced towards us, its movements slow and deliberate. I could feel my pulse racing as I searched desperately for a way out, but it was too late. We were trapped. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the figure stopped in its tracks, its gaze fixed on something behind me. I turned to see what it was, and my blood ran cold. There, standing in the doorway, was another figure, tall and imposing with eyes that burned like fire. It raised a hand towards the first figure, and with a deafening roar, it vanished into thin air. I blinked in disbelief, unsure of what I had just witnessed. But before I could make sense of it all, the first figure grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the exit. "We need to go," they said, their voice urgent, "before it comes back." I didn't need to be told twice. Together, we ran from the warehouse, the sounds of our footsteps echoing through the night. As we reached the safety of the street outside, I turned to thank the stranger who had saved me. But when I looked, they were gone, disappearing into the darkness without a trace. To this day, I still don't know what I encountered that night. Was it a ghost, a demon, or something else entirely? It all started innocently enough, as most terrifying tales tend to do. It was a typical Friday night, and like any other millennial, I found myself mindlessly scrolling through Snapchat stories. The usual mix of friends' antics, cute pet videos, and random memes filled my screen. But then something caught my eye. A story from a user I didn't recognize. The username was cryptic, just a jumble of letters and numbers that meant nothing to me. Curiosity piqued, I tapped on the story, expecting another mundane clip of someone's dinner or a blurry selfie. But what I saw next sent a chill down my spine. The screen was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the Snapchat interface. It took me a moment to realize that the person behind the camera was walking through a dimly lit hallway. The walls were adorned with peeling wallpaper, and the air was heavy with an ominous silence. As the mysterious figure moved forward, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that washed over me. There was something about the way they moved, something unnatural, almost as if they were gliding instead of walking. I wanted to look away, to close the app and pretend I'd never stumbled upon this strange story, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. Suddenly, the figure stopped, and the camera panned to reveal a closed door at the end of the hallway. Without hesitation, they reached out and twisted the doorknob, revealing a room shrouded in darkness. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for something, anything, to happen. And then, it did. A piercing scream echoed through the speakers of my phone, causing me to jump in my seat. I watched in horror as the camera spun around, capturing glimpses of something, someone, lurking in the shadows. I couldn't make out any details, just the vague outline of a figure. But it was enough to send shivers down my spine. Before I could process what I was seeing, the story abruptly ended, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. Who was that person? What had I just witnessed? And more importantly, was it real? Unable to shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me, I quickly closed the app and tried to push the unsettling experience to the back of my mind. But no matter how hard I tried to forget, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As the days passed, I found myself obsessively checking Snapchat, hoping to catch another glimpse of the mysterious user's story. But try as I might, it seemed that they had vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a lingering sense of unease. Just when I thought I'd never uncover the truth behind the haunting Snapchat story, I received a notification that sent a chill down my spine. A new message from an unknown sender, containing nothing but a single word: watch. With trembling hands, I opened the message, half expecting to be met with another terrifying video. But instead, what I found was even more disturbing. A series of photos, each one depicting a different location. A deserted street, an abandoned building, a darkened alley. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots. The sender was challenging me to follow in their footsteps, to unravel the mystery of the haunting Snapchat story once and for all. And despite every instinct screaming at me to delete the message and forget about it, I couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. Armed with nothing but my phone and a sense of impending doom, I set out into the night, determined to uncover the truth behind the chilling tale that had consumed my thoughts for days on end. The first location was eerily quiet. The only sound the soft crunch of gravel beneath my feet as I made my way down the deserted street. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that every shadow held some unseen threat waiting to pounce. But despite my growing sense of unease, I pressed on, driven by a morbid curiosity to uncover the secrets hidden within these darkened streets. And as I turned the corner and came face to face with the next location, a dilapidated building looming ominously in the distance, I knew that there was no turning back. With a shaky breath, I stepped inside, the musty smell of decay assaulting my senses as I made my way through the labyrinthine corridors. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind sent a shiver down my spine. But still, I pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take another step, I stumbled upon it. A small, nondescript door tucked away in a forgotten corner of the building. With trembling hands, I reached out and twisted the doorknob, revealing a sight that would haunt me for the rest of my days. The room beyond was bathed in an eerie green light, the walls adorned with strange symbols and markings that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. In the center of the room stood a figure, their back turned to me, their body swaying gently in time with some unseen rhythm. I opened my mouth to speak, to demand answers, but before I could utter a word, the figure turned to face me, and I recoiled in horror at what I saw. Their face was twisted and contorted, their eyes burning with a malevolent light that sent a cold chill down my spine. And as they took a step forward, reaching out with gnarled fingers, I knew that I was in the presence of something not of this world. With a scream that echoed through the empty halls, I turned and ran, the sound of my footsteps drowned out by the pounding of my heart. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of my own home, where I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath, my mind reeling from the horrors I had witnessed. And as I lay there in the darkness, the events of that fateful night replaying over and over in my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that the haunting Snapchat story was far from over. In fact, I had a sinking suspicion that it was only just beginning.